parenting is probably the most exhausting thing a human being will ever do, more than running a marathon or climbing a mountain. And it's very true in our world. The saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. The baseline is not about income, it's about what level of support you can pull around yourself. And if a person doesn't have that, be careful. You are putting your marriage at risk. Be very aware, it's not easy.
Hi everybody, welcome back to The Human Exchange, a platform where I want to discuss all things performance, potential, and purpose in a real, raw, and hopefully relevant way, covering themes across personal and professional areas in our lives. Here at The Human Exchange, I am very interested to connect with not just experts, but humans. And in this episode, I want to build things up a little bit first, right? I've got two humans in front of me, but the reason I got them for this episode is we're going to talk a little bit about something that is affecting a lot of us, and there is content out there, but I really want to do a deep dive. I want to talk about parenting and careers and how that all fits together. So let me build it up a little bit by sending a bit of context. I've noticed that parenting has changed, whether we liked it or not. So we are considered millennials. We're in our 30s, approaching 40. And a lot of what we know about parenting is from our parents. But what is not really highlighted often is that the way our parents and their parents parented is very different from the way we are parenting, or rather the landscape of parenting. One simple example would be, back then, it was kind of acceptable if the men brought home the bacon, so to speak. They went out to get a job, they got the money in, and the women just take care of the household and the kids. But now, there is a societal expectation that dads should weigh in as well. But there is also the economic factor. Dual incomes is more and more necessary for many households to even, I would say, survive in most urban areas. So the woman has to go out and work. At the same time, women are also getting more and more opportunities, and they're told to go and make something of themselves. Yet, when they have a kid, well, it impacts the woman a lot more, right? For obvious reasons, from a physical aspect and everything. So, but then how do they balance that? What do they do, right? Do they put their career on hold and all those things, right? So, a lot of things that we can talk about. Now, the reason why I got Chris and Rachel in front of me is because they are really, 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 really special, but also crazy in some sense, okay? Because they both have high-flying corporate careers, but they also have 4 kids, all under the age of 7. One more on the way, I might add. And if that is not enough to raise your anxiety levels, then man, you are strong. But anyway, Chris, Rachel, welcome to The Human Exchange.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we begin, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourselves, what you do, where you come from, just so that the audience can get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. Happy to be here. Rachel and I have been married for about next year, 10 years.
Wow.
Both of us generally grew up in KL and have known each other for a while. Yes, as you rightly said, we have 4 kids. Eldest is 7. Jehan, we got a 4-year-old. Ari, a 2-year-old. Rafa, and a youngest is a girl. Kara, 1-year-old. And yes, a 5th one on the way. When we're not doing this, so that's our full-time job. And when we're not doing that, we also happen to work. I work in a bank, and Rachel works in an airline, basically.
Cool. Rachel, anything you want to add? About yourself?
I think Chris has really summed up the gist of us. We've been in the throes of parenting at least the last
7 years.
8 years. I think one of the things you identified just now about parenting, about parents being older. We are older parents, to be very fair. We got married a bit on the later side, and we started later. So, but yeah, we've kind of accelerated.
So is
yes.
that the reason why you decided to have so many? Just kind of like play catch up.
No, it's not. We were very happy with 2. So,
That's the first question then. Did you plan to have this many?
No. No, that was never the plan. I think, to be very fair, we've been really blessed. The word our colleagues always use is rezeki. This is really God's rezeki to us, God's blessings. So we are very, very blessed, highly favored. But it's not been the easiest ride. We don't deny that. Yeah, it has definitely have had a lot of challenges. But I think one of the things that we continue to discover about ourselves, one of the things I discovered about us very, very recently, about maybe a month ago, was we do like doing crazy things. So I think this is amongst the craziest ride that we are
So
on.
some people will go bungee jumping, skydiving, maybe they buy a sports car, but you guys decide, hey, let's do something crazy. Let's have as many kids as possible.
Well, to be very fair, I think, like I said, for our honeymoon, we went climbing.
yeah.
So I think that should have given us a taster of what is to come. But yeah, so that kind of sums us up to a great extent.
So you guys are high flying corporate people, right? You work in a bank, and Rachel, before I knew you, you're working in is that considered private equity? No.
In a sovereign wealth fund.
Sovereign wealth fund,
Yes,
yeah. And
and
now
then-
you're working in a aviation
airline
group,
group,
right?
yeah.
One of the nation's or the nation's biggest one. So you guys are high level, high achieving corporate people. What were some of the things that you had to kind of like navigate, especially around like careers? Now that you've got a big family, any practical things that you had to maybe even say no to up to this point, leading from where you were to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, so of course, before we had children and we got married, and even before we got married, career is a huge part of our lives. No apologies for that. I think for both of us, we have been very clear. We were very clear as we met that we work in environments where demands are high, expectations are high, therefore obviously hours are high. But we love what we do, and we've always loved what we do. When we had children, I don't think that changed. But certainly the choices we need to make to pursue that same outcome has changed. Simple example, obviously, prior to me working in a bank, I was in consulting, in management consulting. In management consulting, if you had asked me, 10, 15 years ago, what would be my dream job, I would have said, I want to work for one of the most prestigious management consulting firms in the world. And so obviously, when we got married and had children, I left that life for various reasons, various practical and pragmatic reasons of wanting to be a bit more stable, focus on family and settle things down. But interestingly enough, not too long ago, I was approached very, very opportunistically by one of these most prestigious firms in the world to kind of go into the process of exploring an opportunity. And, out of curiosity and just to scratch the itch, I said, well, let's explore this. I told Rachel as well, just explore this. And it was as challenging as I expected. I told her it's the most difficult series of interviews I've ever done in my life. It's ridiculous, how difficult this is. And reached the point where I got the job, got the offer. And I remember they sent a box of fruits even to our house saying, we're looking forward, for you to come. But clearly when I got that fruits and she was like, are we taking this? And I was like, no, actually it was almost like a no-brainer that no, I just was very curious. What was this like? But I don't have to think very hard. I would never take this job up. Even if the compensation was pretty decent, the perks are pretty decent, obviously, and the opportunity, we're talking about one of the most prestigious firms in the world. But at that point, obviously, the choice was very obvious. And so, yes, does the aspiration change to want to grow as a corporate leader? No, it doesn't. But does the pathway change? Yes. And I think we have kind of reached an understanding, even with Rachel's career, which she can elaborate on separately. We've reached a general understanding. There are many ways to kind of achieve a certain goal. And I think that the kind of the last point around this, I think we've been very fortunate, blessed, lucky, whatever you want to call it, to have great opportunities and great people who believe in us. that open the right doors at somehow unexpectedly the right times. And that kind of gives us that assurance as long as you kind of do the right thing, prioritize your life around the right things. Again, whether rezeki, whether divine intervention, as one of my former bosses like to say, or whether luck, things open up for us somehow at the right time, and we like to continue to believe that would be the pathway for us.
Hey everybody, I want to take a break from the conversation we're having to tell you that this episode is actually sponsored by Medicos. Now, I'm not the type that usually wears a mask, nor do I like to, but whenever I need to, I go to no other brand except Medicos. Why? Because it is the most comfortable and it offers up to 3 times more protection than any other mask you will find in the market. On top of that, they've got a great range. They've got my favorite here, Slim. They've got some for the kids, Junior. They also have a hijab range because they have your comfort and practicality in mind. You can find their mask in all major pharmacies, Watson's, Caring, All Pro, as well as the Medicos online store and the e-commerce sites, Lazada and Shopee. Now, back to the episode. Great. Thanks. Very, very insightful. Maybe I'll get Rachel to weigh in from her experience before I do a bit of a deeper dive. I do have questions, but Rachel, I'd like to hear from you as well.
So very aligned with Chris. I think just to add to everything, I think rightly so, doors have been opened, but not just doors have been opened, doors have also been timely closed. So I think, given, aligned with Chris, I think when we first met and, we were dating and things like that, work was always a major priority and it was never a question. It was never a difficult issue between us. But when opportunities came along the way, like Chris said, it took a different path. I was once upon a time a lawyer, an M&A lawyer, and ours were insane. Deals were big. But when the opportunities came, it wasn't as if our corporate dreams changed. But what then happened was, given the landscape of the financial world, ours were a lot more improved wherever we were placed and stuff like that, for whatever reasons. And I still remember when we were about to give birth to our first child. And that was when I was really in the middle of this whole decision around, should I step out of work? Should I continue? This was our first child and stuff like that. It was 2018. And we were also, at that time, an offer was on the table for us to move overseas. And I remember we were talking about it, and at that time, a lot of naivety, lack of wisdom. We were like, let's go for it. Let's go overseas. Chris was going to freelance.
I was going to be a house husband.
Yeah, he was going to be a house husband. We were going super gung-ho, and I was like, we don't need help. We don't need our parents around. We can take care of the kids and we can work. We can do this. But the door closed. And the door closed 2 months, right, before we gave birth. And then politically, the country changed and my upper bosses changed and the direction of my company totally changed and the opportunity just fell through. And all that happened in a span of 3 to 5 months during the time when we gave birth, and I was in maternity. And when I came back from maternity, again, like you rightly pointed out, women do take a back seat, inevitably because we give birth and things like that. But I was so fortunate. Somehow another timely divine intervention, covering rezeki, however you look at it, it wasn't a huge hiccup to my entire career because the rest of Malaysia was on a standstill, right? With the whole change in political climate, with the whole change in corporate Malaysia, there was a thing. And then that happened. So that was one big incident that really made me realize that there's something more than, what we can even orchestrate. And then when you talk about career opportunities, just when we were, rising in our careers, and we are still trying to climb and, all that stuff, COVID hit. And COVID was probably one of our most difficult season from a career perspective and from a parenting perspective. But what it helped was we didn't have to go out whining and dining as much. It wasn't, the expectations around all of that suddenly diminished. Everything went offline. So that whole season, yes, it was the most difficult season. It was very challenging. But again, there was a covering over our lives, over our career, over even our parenting life, over our marriage in that sense. So we cannot deny that from a career perspective, there has been difficult decisions, but a lot of things were beyond what we orchestrated. And and it's worked out to date.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Lots and lots of things to pick up from there. So I'll go into my first question and I'll start with a simple one. Imagine I'm a younger person and I come to you and I say, I want to start with a family. I want to start a family. Sorry, bad England. I want to start a family, but my career is very demanding right now. So I'm not sure if I can. What kind of advice or response will you give to this person?
So again, I think so you put it in your introduction. The world today is very different from the world, even to be honest, when we started our careers 15, 20 years ago or thereabouts. And certainly the ability to delay certain choices at the expense of something else, or the trade-off certain choices, is a lot more feasible today vis-a-vis 15, 20 years ago. So to a person today, I would say certainly the choice we made may not have been, which was to kind of delay children till a little bit later, and all of that, may not have been the choice the vast majority of people make. But today it's a much more feasible choice. And I'm presuming whether the person is a male or a female doesn't matter, but it's even more interesting that the person is a female, and Rachel can speak a lot about this. We know many people. If a person is a female and she says, I'm 30 years old and I want to have children, but I also want to pursue a career, the options 20 years ago versus the options today are so different. Yes. The options today are actually a lot more available, where you say, if you want to pursue a career, you can afford to delay it if you wanted to, because you have options. Yeah. And so really that therefore comes down to what trade-offs are you willing to make? There will naturally be trade-offs, and as Rachel rightly shared, you will take a hit in your career growth. The science or data has shown women at the same level of a man at the same age are about 20-30% less compensated, simply because of the choices that women have made historically. But today, that's much less of a case. You can choose that pathway and still get the option of having a child a couple of years a little bit later when you're more established. I think what we would say, and has worked out for us, and what I would tell people, is that the biggest trade-off is between the ability to support your family and the energy you have. When you're young, you got a lot of energy, not much ability to support. When you're older, you got much more ability to support, slightly less energy, although I don't think we've got no energy. But parenting takes a lot of energy, extremely. I mean, no one told us that, or everyone told us that, but there's no way you could figure that out until you actually do it. Parenting is probably the most exhausting thing a human being will ever do, more than running a marathon or climbing a mountain. Rachel said when we went on honeymoon, we climbed the Mulu pinnacles, and we walked like 15 kilometers in, climbed the pinnacles, walked 15 kilometers out, and that was our honeymoon. I would say parenting is more exhausting than that any day, 10 times more exhausting. So it's the energy versus the support. And so for a person, you've got to make that decision. Yeah. You have the energy when you're young, sure, but you will sacrifice certain things in terms of support, your ability to financially support and the infrastructure you have, versus kind of enabling that support at the expense of certain energy that you may not have as you get older. Yeah. So for sure, it's a natural trade-off, and a person has to choose between what's important and what's priority for them.
Yeah. Is there a certain baseline that people should aim for or look for when starting a family? Baseline meaning like you got this level of income, or you've already got at least like a deposit on a house, or I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I don't think it's about income. I think it's about your support infrastructure. So I think, and it's very true in our world. Yes. The saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. I think for us, that's exceptionally true. And so the baseline is not about income. It's about what level of support you can pull around yourself. to enable it and kind of to kind of crystallize this, your family, your in-laws, your brothers, your sisters, any kind of infrastructure with school, with daycares or whatever. Obviously, the finance that you have to get external help, domestic help if you want, or even part-time or full-time, all of that support, that baseline is important. And certainly so in our case, we've been extremely blessed and fortunate to have very strong support around us, apart from each other, obviously. But we have built almost a whole kampong,
Army.
an army of
Delegated parents.
of very structured, systematic support around our little universe that still enables us to do what we are able to do. If we don't have this army and this system of support or this kampong, and if a person doesn't have that, then I would honestly tell the person, be careful. You are putting your marriage at risk. You're putting your children at risk. You're putting a lot of things at risk. And so, be very aware that it's not easy. If you go with this alone, doesn't mean it's not possible. Obviously, many people have done it, but I think we do not take for granted the fact that kind of baseline is critical for us. The amount of support that we've had.
That's really good advice, and I think it's. I like how you point out clearly that it's not about the financial mean, not just about the financial means, even though those financial means can buy you the support that you need. But I think a lot of people have this mentality where I need to be secure first before I start a family. But they don't see the other kind of support that is needed, right? The relational support, the more of those things, the relational support, the soft side of things.
Yeah. So just to add to that, and I think to bring the picture thing, so financial, I think what Chris also kind of addresses is that basic need baseline, which is very important across the entire support infrastructure. But to add to that is also between the husband and wife, I think between us, that mutual expectation of what you want from this. Because reality is, money can buy a lot of things. But if that's not on the table, then does that add another layer of conflict? Does that add another layer of, because conflict adds unnecessary stress on a lot of things. And I think that's where Chris and I, to a great extent, it's a lot of expectations. There needs to be some level of maturity from both ends in that sense to be able to say, I'm not going to fully rely entirely to get everything from this sole person. He's not going to get it solely from me. If financially we are stuck here, can we turn to someone? Not just financially, emotionally, mentally. Is there something? But keeping the sanctity of the marriage still intact and the family still intact. I think that's very, very important. So that mutual expectations.
Yeah, that's so true. Mutual expectations. Because I think earlier I mentioned that there's a kind of like societal expectation now where the men should be more involved, and it's not wrong. There's a lot of value in that. I think I also read a statistic somewhere where it said that millennial fathers and below, right, are the most involved generation compared to the previous generations, Gen X, boomers, and all that. So there's great value in that. And on that expectation, right, then I want to ask this question to you, Rachel. How will you speak to a young lady who maybe has high career aspirations? Because I'm drawing from what you spoke about, the energy and the ability to support. I think that's a very, very good contrast. So would you advise a younger lady who is ambitious but also wants to start a family at some point to either, double down on your career now so that you can build some form of trajectory and margin and distance that maybe later you can take it a little bit easier and then give yourself space to build a family, or have your kids now, maybe if you want to have two, have them now, early, and then later you can, because you got energy, right? So later you can then double down on your career after you have kids. So what would you say? Or do you have an alternative view?
No, I don't. Actually, you rightly pointed out this two juxtaposition. It's always something that I always raise with Chris. Okay, to be very honest, with a lot of girls that come or even women that come my way and they ask me this, a lot of times it's really what the woman wants. And the difficulty is that people do not know what they want. I never knew, to be very honest. I think women want everything. I think that's the difficulty. Like, you know, they say women can have everything. In today's world, we are very empowered to say that we want everything. We want a career, we want family, we want this, we want a loving husband, we want everything under the sky. And in the end, I think it's about showing a lot of women what that life really looks like. There are downsides to starting late. In my case, I think we always say this: we pushed our career at the very early onset. We sacrificed a lot of things at the onset of our careers, with a view that hopefully we can recoup, you know, whatever benefits we can add. But now we are caught up in the throes of very young children parenting. And I always say that to Chris, we do give up, we do sacrifice other things, because we are at a point in our careers now where people are building soft skills. I won't say soft skills, but people are building a lot of network side of things, which we do not have the energy or the time to be able to invest into that. We can build on a skill-based career, but when it comes to a certain level of senior management, you have to sacrifice some of these things, especially with young kids. So is that what you want? Is that aligned with your value system? Is that aligned with your personality? Because I think a lot of these decisions align with what your own personal goals are also. So in my case, I think I can maybe speak for Chris also. In a lot of our case, we are to a great extent, we may be ambitious and career-wise, we want to get to a certain place. But to a great extent, we are quite introverts and we are quite happy with the balance that we have. But it may not work the best for certain people, just because personalities are, So I would say align it with what you think, but take into consideration all of this thing. And going back to what Chris says, women these days have a lot of opportunities. Even back in my days when I was in the middle of pursuing my career, it was even before we met each other. I used to tell my juniors, don't worry about it. We're going to work. I'm going to work like this. At a certain age, I'm just going to freeze my eggs. So today's technology is very available for women to be able to have kids at a later age. It's really how you want to see your life at that later stage.
You gave you made a very good point there. At a certain stage, if you're working in organizations, in corporate, going up, promotion is no longer just about skills, it's about network. Yes. So network is almost like that extracurricular, but a necessary curricular, not really extracurricular.
It is.
And so what are we talking about? We're talking about the extra meeting, we're talking about the different night events, the dinners, the drinks,
the work dinners, social
gaining
dinners.
Visibility. So these are the things that you have to consider.
Yes. Yeah. And those things, taking into consideration those with young kids, the lack of energy and the time and the space. Even in today's world, the landscape has changed. It may not look as traditional as going out for dinners. It may be social media, but having to sit down and edit and do all these things, it's a whole different world.
Yep.
And it's a constantly changing world. And we are in the middle of it, with very young kids. So the flip side is, if we had started younger, and I always say this to some of my junior colleagues, if I had started younger, now my kids would be 10 years old, 12 years old. They will be giving me more time to do some of these things or to even think about it. But now we have no bandwidth to think about some of these things. We just buckle down on what we are traditionally comfortable with.
But kind of to add on to that, so I think it comes, so is it possible for people like us with lots of children to still do some of those things? It's possible, but we got to have strong support and strong understanding from one another.
Yeah.
Simple example, not too long ago, over the weekend, Rachel had a management retreat. throughout the whole weekend. So of course you have to make a decision. What do we do with the children, and what do we do with me? So we made the decision. You know what? Go for your management treat. I will solo parent 4 children
kids.
for one weekend.
With no help. Okay, with help.
With help.
With help.
So we just have to create our army for that weekend that makes it possible for her to go for this retreat. Why? Because as you've rightly called out, it's a necessary part of career and it's a necessary part of corporate life.
Yeah.
You know, and we are very clear on that. I think there are contexts where probably we would say no to some of these things.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that every kind of networking event is a straight up yes. You know, we just deal with it. So obviously there are many instances where we do say no, let's not do that. Yeah. But there are other instances where we go, no, go for it. I'm fully supportive of your career. You're fully supportive of mine. If we have to make adjustments, we just make adjustments. Yep. Life is not so difficult that this becomes so terrible forever. It's just, a short period of discomfort. And that's why I think support, and I think Rach called out that right kind of illustration, understanding from one another and the support from one another is really, really key. I'm very fortunate, and even she's also very fortunate, that I came from a family of 2 working parents. Both my father and my mother worked. So you called out the tradition of the father bringing home the bacon and the mom staying at home. My household was not like that. Yeah. Both my parents worked. So in my head, that's always been the norm.
Yep.
A woman works. A woman who's exceptionally capable and smart and able to do what she can do at a level that, whether you're a man or a woman, you need to be at, should work. She should contribute to the world because she's able to. And no kind of boundary around children or expectations or societal or whatever should stop that.
Yep.
And so really the choice then becomes between the husband and the wife. How do we enable that to happen? Is it difficult? Sure. Of course it's difficult. I was so exhausted after solo parenting 4 kids on Sunday night. I said, don't you talk to me? You have very good. I want to know you tell me everything about your management retreat. I just want to sleep. We talked on a Monday. Yep. I couldn't wait for the Monday. Monday is my favorite day of the week.
Parents will understand.
Yes. So, but that's just what we believe it. That's a necessary and a relevant and a acceptable kind of arrangement for us. That I would tell people that's what you should do. If you really want to seriously start a family, and to the girl who would speak to Rachel and say, what should I do? If with regards to career and family, I would say the first thing you should do is marry well. Yeah. You should find someone that really shares the same values as you. Yeah. If he or she wants you to stay at home and look after your kids 24/7, then you know what? Yeah. That's your choice in marriage. Yeah. Then you need to be accepting of that. So if you want this for your life, marry well and marry someone who shares that values with you as well.
And just to write on that marry well thing, I think more importantly, it is about marrying someone who will support what you want to do. Yeah. So I think a lot of men give lip service to the idea of supporting a woman's career. But I think action speaks louder than words. Definitely action speaks louder than words. And when we say support, that probably is more important. Classic example, every end of the year, when it comes to end of the year, when it comes to management retreats, when it comes to, work dinners, end of the year dinners, year-end staff dinners and stuff like that, we will find a lot of our calendars clash. And this would be work events, dinner events, evening events. What happens? Who's going to be at home with the kids? Who's going to be taking care? And I think having that mutual understanding of which events we decide to go for, looking at it holistically, even as a couple, is very, very important. But at the same time, also not holding a grudge against the other. That emotional, and it goes back to this emotional expectation and emotional maturity is probably very important. To not mull on potential loss, and all these things. I think that's probably very, very important to be able to ensure that the marriage works. So like what Chris said, marry well, and really have that hard, difficult questions discussed, because it will come up. And yeah, I think we've had to have that.
Yep. I want to ask you this question, Rachel. As a woman, as a mom of 4 now going on 5, have there been instances where you saw there was a clear disadvantage onto yourself simply because you were a woman and a mother? And how did you navigate those decisions or those scenarios?
I am still right in the throes of it. I'll be very, very honest. I think it's probably something that I have not passed that we've not passed that season. Is it something that is negative? Yes and no. I would say yes to a certain extent. In the very traditional sense, yes, because there will be inevitably, you're 3 months off work, there will be an expectation, all your KPIs have to be completed in 9 months instead of the 12-year time frame that you're given, and stuff like that. Again, it's depending on timing of the year. So there are all this like nitty-gritty actual, thing. And the reality is that, but given the fact that we've had so many already, we've managed to navigate that part okay in that sense. But there will always be some level of pigeonholing.
Yep.
Yeah, stereotyping, inevitably. But the flip side to it is, I think, today's world, and I always say this to every woman, women today are very, very empowered. And the flip side today is the value of diversity in today's boardroom, and they always say the 30% club, is really because that 30% club brings in that other element which provides diversity to board views. There's no herd mentality when making a decision. And that's the value of mums being at the table. That's the value of having someone with a totally different background from a man being at the table and making decisions together with him. Classic example, at my management committee and my decision, there will be certain decisions when it comes to, and I'm in a very highly regulated industry, very male-dominated industry, where safety, rough and tough, out there in the market, out there in the rain and shine sort of business, right? There will be certain elements that, by virtue of having a woman at the table deciding, you will see there will be certain aspects which are employee-centric, which are very important to values of a company, which maybe you might not see it in the financial sense directly, but what you do see is the indirect value of some of this decision making because it's maybe more employee-centric. There are different elements. So that's always the value of that stereotype in that sense. Yeah. And that's always the value of the 30% club and pro-diversity at the table. Yeah.
Do you think it's actually okay that for how do I put it this way? Not to say okay, but because what I observe is that more and more people are, as you pointed out, Chris, they are delaying having kids, so they end up having kids very late. And it's either by virtue of that, or it's also simply what they decided. They then end up only having, one more than 2 kids. But then there are also couples who have very clearly and deliberately decided we're not going to have any children. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? And they would say things like, well, They understand the kind of sacrifices that it's needed to raise a family. Maybe they've thought about it, or they've seen it around them, or maybe a bit of both. And then they decide that, okay, you know what? I'm just not going to have kids. Why do I put myself through this
pain, agony.
pain, Why do I do this to myself, right? So I'll just choose to focus on me or focus on my career. What are your thoughts into that?
No, so so absolutely fine. Having kids is, again, like I said, it's the most exhausting, one of the most difficult things a person can do. But I think we would also say, and so if you asked me, could I replay my life and the life goes on in a world without children? What I would say, and I think Rachel would also say this, is that we could, but I'm pretty confident our life would not be as meaningful and fulfilling as it is today. I think, yes, having kids is the most difficult thing a person can do. Having 4 kids is multiplied by 4,000. But it's also the most meaningful and fulfilling thing a person can have. And I mean, there's multiple people have talked about this. One of that famous social scientist Jordan Peterson has always talked about this, that if you want to get a person to grow up and experience meaning in life, that guy has a child.
Yes.
Because that way you're forced to not think about yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, you don't need children to not think about yourself. You can do many things. You can do charity. You can do work with an NGO. Of course. But having a child forces you to not think about yourself, to put someone else's needs before yourself. There's no option. There's no you cannot choose. Rachel and I cannot choose to sleep in on a Saturday morning because I worked very hard this week. We don't get that option on a Saturday morning. I still have to wake up at 6 o'clock. There's no option to not wake up at 6 o'clock. But the flip side to that is, and we would wholeheartedly say this, really is the most fulfilling thing in life. Far more fulfilling than acing a board meeting, than getting a promotion, than achieving your targets. Those are nice, those are great. And someone who pursues their career and finds meaning in that, all power to you, and I think that's a fantastic thing. But for us, having our daughter kind of laugh when I say something stupid, and she don't laugh, but my daughter laughs, I'm like, yes, that is meaningful. That is so purposeful. Like this is what I would trade that stupid board meeting for, that stupid networking dinner for. Yes, that is meaning for me and for us in life. And so that's what I would say to a person like that. Yeah. You can take that choice, but for me, we've taken down this road, and I can wholeheartedly say is the absolute right choice to find that level of kind of purpose and meaning in life.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's definitely not enjoyable on the day-to-day, minute by minute living. And in the traditional sense, I would say it's not what people would say happy. You're not every day, you're not happy. But like what Chris said, I think life is about meaning, purpose, fulfilling, being full. I think there's no question. Every Monday, we are the most exhausted. Sunday night, we're the most exhausted because the weekend is flat out with the kids. And Monday, we enjoy Mondays.
It's best.
Yeah, Monday mornings are the best. We enjoy it.
Yes.
Yeah. But we will always say life was so full.
Yep.
And that's something that we can never take away. And no one can ever take that away from us. So, yeah.
It's almost like parenting is working. It's like working out. While you're exercising,
some level of dopamine and adrenaline.
When there's like the aches and the stitches that you're feeling, you're not enjoying it. But then after, when you are stronger, healthier, there is a sense of achievement. Yeah, I totally get you.
Yep.
I saw this meme recently or so. It said that my favorite thing in the world is spending time with my kids, and my least favorite thing in the world is also spending time with my kids.
Totally agree.
It's kind of like, it's not a binary thing when it comes to parenting and life with kids, right? It's not a either or, yes or no. Often it's both, and they are at tension, right? Yes, it is exhausting, draining, spending time and raising your kids, but at the same time, it's incredibly fulfilling as well. Yeah. And that question was kind of like then a segue into the next thing I want to talk to you about. Parenting styles. How would you describe your parenting style? Gentle parenting?
I think we are balanced. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. We're not gentle.
Not gentle.
Because we have rotans all over our house. We are not exceptionally strict the way, parenting 40, 50 years ago or 60, 70 years ago is.
We're not emotionally unattached.
Where you just
unavailable.
Listen to me, don't speak. You're only seen, you're not heard. So we're not that either. So I think we're fairly balanced. And it comes back down to kind of mutual understanding and mutual values. So between Rachel and myself, I think one of the other words we think about is kind of situational leadership, or the context kind of shapes the parenting.
Yeah.
Simple example, if a child one of our kids could be, crying and screaming his head off, we'll think about the context. Is he crying and screaming his head off because he's hungry, he's tired, he peed it on himself? What happens? Something? Or he's just crying and screaming his head off because he's just
tantrumy,
a naughty boy. So context is really important, and I think we kind of read off each other, read off the situation, and go, yeah, that shapes the style for the moment. So do I hug you and tell you, yep, life is good, don't worry, it's okay, hug mommy, hug daddy, hug you for 5 minutes, go out and you're fine? Or do I take out a rotan and go, you stop it now, or you're gonna get punished? Certainly that's how we both kind of toggle between that.
Yeah.
And I think that's necessary. And I think we've seen, although it's still early to say, we've seen the fruits in our eldest child, Jehan, who is exceptionally self-regulated. He's not perfect. Certainly he's got his moments of tantrum, and certainly he's got his moments of still growing up. He's only 7. But he really knows how to self-regulate himself. And the reason I think he knows how to self-regulate is because he knows between his mom and his dad, he knows there's a world where certain things will cross the line and certain things won't. And there are contexts in which those things cross the line and things don't. And he's kind of figured that out. So we would almost say, and I told him, that not too long ago, that you're at an age where I don't want to spank you and I don't need to spank you, because you're such a self-regulating boy. But certainly it doesn't mean you'll never get scolded. You always will get scolded. So it's really about kind of getting to that level with each child, and we hopefully, all the other kids also kind of reach that stage. But it gives us that comfort that as long as you kind of tread this balance between kind of the rod and kind of the hug, I think that seems to have worked for us quite well.
Yeah.
Do you guys actively talk about or intentionally talk about your parenting philosophy? Or is this kind of like, we'll figure it out along the way and align as we go?
I think one of the things we have come to realize, and it's an unspoken rule between us, an unspoken mutual respect between ourselves, is we are very similar. And I think that helps a lot with the amount of pressure that is on our lives, correct? We don't actually sit together and talk a lot. We don't have the time or the space. But I think because somehow or another our value system has somehow aligned and we read off each other, so I think that helps a lot. The other part, I think, and I just wanted to write on this, this situation leadership. I'm sure everyone in the corporate world would have heard it and stuff like that. I think where we are, because of our backgrounds, from a personal perspective, from growing up, education, and even career-wise, with a lot of this values have also kind of merged. And so I always say this whenever I'm dealing with the kids or even dealing with my husband, it's a lot like dealing with your employees or dealing with your team. And there are certain things in life where, because they are very young or they don't know how to do certain things, then it is very, very important to step in, to be very directional, to say, do this because I'm your mom, do this because this is the way this is it. I'm not going to try to over-explain things. And I think in this world, there is this journey of trying to explain. We do that maybe in the car and stuff like that when we talk to them. But in that moment, when safety is at risk, when there are things that basic needs need to be met, then we become very, very directional. But then there are other aspects where, like Chris said, we are balanced and we kind of adjust accordingly, where we have not reached, I'll be very honest with you, our kids are still on the younger side, that whole empowered employee where they can be a little more independent and they can fly on their own, and you kind of just like mentor them. We're not at that stage yet with our kids, but I think let's just hope we can come. But again, we will have to see when the time comes, what happens.
Have there been moments where one of you disagree with the other on a parenting style, decision, or action? And how do you navigate that?
Yeah, no, all the time. Not just moments, all the time.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, no, very simple example. I'm sure she would bring it up
night.
too. Last night, what happened? I don't know. Too new. No, a simple example. So a few weeks or not too long ago, our eldest son, we found out our eldest son didn't have his school books for a period of time. And we were not aware of it. So obviously when we found out, there were two approaches. She had it and I had. Her approach was, oh my God, we need to get going on the teacher and, get put fire up this teacher's something, because she's not doing her job and I'm going to get on her and all that. And I was like, no, we got to get on our son because our son is the one who's accountable for his school books. He never told us. So I need to teach him discipline. Why didn't you tell us you didn't have your school books for some time, And so, of course, we had differences in how do we approach this. Do I take it out on my son? Do I take it out on the teacher? Do I take it out on both of them? In the end, we kind of reached a sweet spot in the middle where generally we took it out on the teacher, a little bit on the son as well. But yes, there was differences in approaches. And I think the best way, certainly in this instance, is we had to debate it out. As Rachel said, we are similar, but that's not always a good thing because we're both very opinionated and alpha. So, but that's just how we have to operate, and we have to debate it out. And in most cases, it never tips over into unnecessary arguments. And so I think we have reached a point where as long as you can debate it out, kind of challenge the views of both sides. Typically, we will reach the resolution, and I think in this case, it's a good example of how we reach that resolution. So yeah, that for us generally works. Again, because we've been married for a while, we understand each other's styles. We reach a level where we know it's not personal. Yes, we talk a certain way. It can be a little bit in your face at times when it's about topics that we care about, but it's not personal. We try not to let it tip into the level of personal. And really about resolving, what's best for our kid as well in the end.
Hi everyone, before we continue with our conversation, I want to take this moment to ask a favor from you. If you have been finding the content and direction of THX to be valuable, can you do me this one favor and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well as the Spotify platform? This will give me an indication or an idea of how helpful or how valuable what we've been doing here at THX would be to you. And if you want to go even a step further, I want to invite you to subscribe to our Substack at thehumanexchange.substack.com. It's a mailing list, and the intention that I have behind that is to give you further insights to some of the topics that we've been talking about, as well as build a community that will be interested in exploring the themes of performance, purpose, as well as potential in both our professional and personal lives. Thanks, everybody. And now back to the episode.
Yeah.
Would you describe yourselves as active parents? What I mean by that is that actively engaging. Because I have the observation there are active parents and passive parents, and there's a scale, right? It's not, again, a black or white category. It's probably a scale. So I would describe active parents as people who are very interested and involved in the child's development. So they spend time with the kids, they talk to the kids, they play with the kids, teach them how to ride bikes, do activities with them. And then you've got the other end of the scale, which is the passive parents, where, as long as you are full, you are clean, you are rested, that's the limit of my involvement. I'll just slap a iPad or a phone in front of you, and you just kind of do it on your own. So I don't know, help me weigh in onto this from your points of view. Active and passive parenting, what are some of the pros, cons, your experiences?
Okay, so I think just to clarify, I think that active and passive parenting style, I think you rightly point out, landscape of parenting has changed totally today. To be very fair, I think the end spectrum of a passive parenting is probably not common, not the most common these days. To be very fair, however people use whatever, devices or whatever to kind of thing, I think a lot of it is probably aligned with
somewhere in the middle.
Various things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the flip side of that statement is that the other end of very active parenting is helicopter parenting.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, which is very, very common. So we are definitely not helicopter parenting at all because, as Chris identified, there have been many instances where we just do not know what's happening with our kids' education. We are not on the ball. We're not checking everything. There's a certain level of thing. But I think to a great extent, talking about engagement, talking about, being there and emotionally there, physically there. I think that is not a question. We are there in that sense. The more important thing, and we always talk about it, but it's something that we probably have to talk as we have to kind of readdress as our kids get older and they navigate different things in life, right? As they enter into teenage years and preteen years and all these things, right?
Yeah.
But at where a lot of our kids are now, I think the part that is important to us is setting the value system. So I think Chris mentioned just now, imposing responsibility, ensuring that there's some level of self-regulation, ensuring that there's a huge level of independence. Those things are important to us. Ensuring that we are, I think, generally in agreement with this, authority figures. There are certain level of authority where we acknowledge, as parents, we acknowledge that they have authority over our kids also, like school teachers, and we are not going to cross that boundaries. We're not going to helicopter over those things.
Yep.
We're going to watch. So there are certain level of value system that we kind of put, I would say, guardrails for our kids to recognize that this is at this stage. I don't deny that as they get older, there will be different things that we have to navigate, and then we will have to kind of cross the bridge when it comes.
Yeah. So I think the other way to think about it is there are kind of a world of non-negotiables.
Yeah.
So a simple world of non-negotiables for us is, for example, having conversations with our kids. So no devices. That's a simple thing. Over dinner or over meals or whatever. Many families do that. We don't. We won't comment on that. For us, that's a non-negotiable. Zero devices, even for the parents.
Yeah.
Mommy and daddy will not pick up the phone and check an SMS and happily just watch a video. Therefore, I don't expect you to as well. And we don't do that. So it's a set of non-negotiables. Another simple set of non-negotiables. We will catch up with each other at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Regardless of the work schedules, of the work requirements, deadlines that need to be met, deliverables that need to be met. We will stop work at a certain point. I'll create that window of a couple of hours and it says, let's catch up with at the end of the day until you go to bed. Put you to bed, and then life can continue with work or whatever happens after that until whatever time it needs to happen. But so those certain things are non-negotiables. Outside of that non-negotiables, I would say we're probably closer a little bit to the passive side, therefore, in a sense that we are certainly not going to pick up our kids' school bags every day and look, oh my God, you've got 10 pieces of homework. Let me sit down with you and do every single page.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we've got like I said earlier, we've got the army and an infrastructure that supports our kids in that, like, Rachel's mom.
Other authority figures.
That help us with that. And we're so grateful for that. I mean, without them, I think our kids would suffer. Because we're fortunate enough to have the right level of support to help with some of these things. Or something like practicing the piano. If you asked anyone, they say the way to get piano, the way good at piano, your kid must sit down in front of the piano every single day, an hour a day, and play the piano. Our kids don't do that, or at least we don't monitor and obsess over that. Are there parents who do? Yes, of course. So we certainly don't sit on that end of the spectrum. So is our kid the greatest at piano? No, he's not. He's probably got no natural skill in the start, but doesn't help that he doesn't practice. So certainly there are components that we are prepared to compromise on or trade off. To close our eyes, close one eye on. But there are a set of non-negotiables. And I think, as Rachel said, some of these non-negotiables are anchored on values and on characters and kind of things that we think are important.
Yeah.
Everything else is kind of can be improvised. If I can sit down with you and do your homework, great. Let's do it. If I can sit down with you at the piano and let's work on something, great.
Yeah.
Then let's do that. And certainly that happens on a not kind of regimented basis, but time to time. And I guess that's where we are today. Is it perfect? Probably not. Do we wish we could do more of a little bit closer to be more active in some of these areas? Of course we do. But given the choices that we've made, I think that's kind of where we are today.
I think the thing that keeps us anchored in all of this is having the bigger picture in mind. I think going back to that debate that we had around Jehan's education and stuff like that just a few months ago. I still remember when we were looking at when we were in the heat of that moment and stuff like that. And Chris made this comment. He said, we're not going to make a decision just on a spur of a moment. And that really caught me and that's always been to a great extent, that's been our parenting style. What do we do? Will it have an impact 1 year from now? Will it have impact 3 years from now? Will it have impact 5 years, 10 years? And if it doesn't, and it goes back to using of the rotan. We always say this, one spank a year or one spank in 3 months, will that emotionally scar him? Yeah, maybe, but yeah, exactly. All of us got how many spanks? It doesn't. So there are values that I think and I think that keeps us anchored in a lot of our decision making, and a lot of our active or passive parenting loss of a book. What's more important? Is it the responsibility or is it the lack of the book? Okay, if it's lack of the things like that, then that keeps that goal in mind. Yeah.
So I'm going to assume that you guys believe in corporal punishment because you mentioned rotan.
Yes.
Right? Rotan is this bamboo stick, a cane, right?
Yes.
Where we use it to hit the naughty ones. What are some of your principles and practices around the rotan?
Sure.
Is there a system to it?
Yes, there is an escalating case of punishment. The rotan is the tool of last resort, and I think as Rachel has called out a little bit, we don't use it often, or at least not as often as parenting 40, 50 years ago, where rotan was the tool of first resort. That you start with the rotan and then do everything else. We use it as a tool of last resort, and it's more a tool of kind of the
threat.
The threat, that's right.
Yeah.
The view, the thought of it drives the behavior.
Fear of it.
Or the fear of it drives the behavior. So yes, we do believe in corporal punishment or in spanking. But I think again, like I said, our eldest kid has kind of given us that the recalibration, of what is the right thing. Because we certainly see him as someone that really is able to self-regulate. So did he get spanked when he was younger? Yes. Did we? But as he grew older and we saw his ability to self-regulate, we took it away more and more and more and more to reach a point where I don't even need to mention it. He would know and he would recognize, hey, look, this is crossing the line. And there are other ways I need to self-regulate myself before I cross the line. So, go to the room on my own, lock myself in a room, go touch my Lego for 5 minutes, calm down. All right, then I'm good. So I think there's value in using some level of, corporal punishment as long as it's not overused. We don't think we overuse it, especially on our younger children. We don't use it at all. It's just as they get to a certain age of reason where they're aware of what they're doing, and kind of adjusting to their ability to regulate themselves. Certainly, yeah, we do believe in that. But again, it's a kind of an escalating sequence of events. Step 1 could be go to your room. So stop it, go to your room. Step 2 could be, or we another technique we use, we count to 5 or we count to 10. If you stop by the point I count to 5, then we're done. We're good. If you cross that line, then you do something else. You cross that line, at some point, we get to the rotan. And we get to the rotan, then that's obviously the last step in the series of events.
Yeah.
Could I ask you a vulnerable question? Has there been moments where you kind of when in the moment you went overboard with the rotan? Then how did you do a post-mortem on it? How did you address it after?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. I think Chris is very gracious in terms of how he's described the use of corporal punishment. I think between us, fitting the stereotype of the naggy mom and stuff like that, yes, I'm probably the one who uses the rotan more often than him. Rightly so, I think, because I think it's still nice to have that final figure of authority coming from the father. The kids kind of know that that's the final boundary. With me, yes, definitely, there's been many, many times. That's why I said last night was a classic example, where one of our kid kind of, and we knew, and I think, and that's where we talk about it, right? It's at a certain age of reason where they know that there's some level of manipulation already. So to me, that is a no-no. To me, that is thing. And so that was when I raised the thing, and I raised my voice. And I think a lot of times with the cane, more fearful than the cane is actually us raising our voice, and the kids get scared because of that, right? And yeah, so my kid, yeah, he broke down, and we it was on a no nonsense basis. It was not because he wanted comfort or anything of that sort. So after that, then that whole incident happened. We knew he was very, very tired, and we knew it was an outcome of he needed naps, but he didn't. It was at a stage where he's dropping a nap and stuff like that. So we sent him to his room, switched off the lights, and in the quiet of it, sat down with them and just started to have a conversation, and really deep dive, asking him what happened, why, what was it, after everything had come down. And thankfully, they are at a stage where, and I said, then that's why Chris says, at a stage where they are able to reason a little more, he could actually articulate why and what happened at that time. And at that moment, then it was a lot easier to say, yes, I'm sorry, this is what happened. I'm sorry I raised my voice. I made you afraid, and things like that. So we do try that. But not all the time. I do admit. I do admit. Yeah.
So you do believe in like saying sorry to your kids if you at moments when
Yes, no. So I was gonna say. So I think it's humbling, but I think we have always accepted we're not perfect, and we're learning as parents, and the mistakes that our parents made with us. You don't want them to do the same mistake, but you end up doing the same mistake again. The biggest difference is the ability to recognize it, right? And so yes, I think we do say sorry to our kids.
Yes.
At times, and unapologetically. Not just last night, but multiple times. We've said, hey, Jahan, I'm really sorry that I shouted at you. I'm really sorry that I was, busy with something, but I should have just stopped. I'm really sorry for that. Again, I think what we are fortunate with, and again, our eldest kid is really, really teaching us a lot of things, is that we're fortunate to kind of see the effect of doing something like that. So certainly, if I say sorry and he goes, no, I don't forgive you, you stupid, then I really think so. Just escalate again.
Where's the cane?
No, definitely.
But I think
you're asking for it.
You're asking for it. But our eldest kid has really taught us that there's value in doing something like that. Because when we say sorry, then we have a conversation. He goes, no, Daddy, I get it. And then we talk, And so that gives us the confidence to know this is a right thing to do. There are obviously different schools of thought, but we believe that's the absolute right thing to do. And I think the other thing that helps us to manage it in the moment is we've got very clever kind of younger kids, or even like especially our third kid, Rafa, who in the moment, when we're disciplining someone, he'll go, "Is Jahan naughty?" and you go, and he's really cute. So you go, no, he's not naughty. He's like, I'm not naughty. I'm very good. Yes, everyone is very good. Sometimes you just make bad choices, but in the moment you kind of regulate the emotions. Because he's so cute, and he's trying to show that I'm really good, and therefore you don't spank me, you only spank him. But that teaches us a little bit as well that don't react in the moment. Don't let the emotions kind of drive what you're gonna do, and make a decision that you will regret. So I think those sorts of environments help us to learn and adapt, and hopefully learning from one kid to another, it gets a little bit more balanced.
But we don't deny that with the amount of stress on our lives, with work, with pressure, with bosses, and with the kids, it definitely builds on the emotions. I think what is very, very important for us is, so we have very different ways of addressing this separation of maybe work and handling work stress and handling what, right? I'm definitely more extrovert than him. And so for me, commuting to work helps me break that thing. Whereas for him, he needs his downtime. He just cannot talk to people. He just needs to, So in that sense, we've kind of had to have this mutual understanding amongst ourselves that we're not going to take whatever emotional stress, because taking care of kids is not in a vacuum, right? We parent the kids during overtime, right?
Yep.
Full-time, overtime, everything under time, right? Everything lack of time, right? And so with that in mind, the whole day's emotions come, and it's not fair for the kids to have to bear the brunt of it, because they are craving attention, to be very fair. And so we've had to kind of find that balance, even vis-a-vis our work stress, vis-a-vis our personalities.
What are some coping strategies that you guys implement for yourselves? You know, like, because you rightfully mentioned, I like that the phrase, parenting is not in a vacuum. We are most of the time living in some sort of pressure cooker, right? Pressure from all around us, even sometimes within us. And what we don't want to do is we don't want our kids to get like the brunt of it or to get our leftovers, right? So with that, naturally, we got to have some kind of like personal coping strategies to replenish our cup or to refill our energy. Like
Go to work.
What
Go to
Go
work.
to work.
That's how you refill your cup.
That's how some people get filled up. But any things you guys personally do?
No, so I think certainly the I don't know what's the common word for it, but kind of it's quiet time. A kind of a moment of personal reflection is really relevant. So simple things. I mean, Rachel can talk about it. One of the things we do, she wakes up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and kind of does all the start of the day stuff, and both of us are up. I'll handle the kids. In that window of 6 to the time the first kid wakes up, which could be 5 minutes, could be 15 minutes, could be 20 minutes. She uses that for kind of a little bit of personal reflection or quiet time, as we would call it. In the midst of doing all the preparation. I think that's hugely relevant, and I think that's hugely important. I mean, she talked about, again, commute to work, sitting in a train for 30 minutes, that kind of downtime, quiet time, kind of retuning your brain. Same with me, kind of coming back from work or toggling from, a work meeting into that, just a little bit of that 15-minute, 20-minute commute, that downtime that allows you to again, reflect, think a little bit about other things, and recalibrate your brain. I think that's necessary, which is also the downside of working from home, because working from home doesn't give you that commute. You go straight from the workstation to the dining table, and you don't get that break. And I'll be wholeheartedly honest, sometimes that results in very bad outcomes, because especially if you've come from kind of stressful situations. So that's not ideal, but if there is a world where we are able to have that break in between, we try to use that for a little bit of that quiet time, a little bit of that reflection, rather than try to answer emails and do all that. We try to separate that period between work and home.
Yeah, I think with Chris sets aside time to exercise. That probably gives him clarity.
Yeah.
Whether it's after the kids go off after our morning rush, or in the evenings, and he also sets that time when you are preparing all their lunch and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's important to recalibrate.
I'm going to do a bit of like a 180 and revisit just the thing on corporal punishment, right? Has anybody ever challenged or put it to you? Or maybe if they have not, then let's hypothetically, if somebody will come to say to you, you know what, you should not raise your hand or anything against your kids because, it's bad, it's trauma-inducing, that kind of thing. What would kind of like your response be to that?
Sure. So again, first of all, I think we don't do corporal punishment all the time. But I think the second perspective is to that, and I don't know about yourself or people who would say that we grew up in a family where we also had corporal punishment. I don't think we're traumatized. I don't think we have come out as screwed up kids, as screwed up adults. I don't think we need to see a psychologist or a shrink to address some of the trauma that we experience through corporal punishment. And I think, there's a common Christian saying that says, if you spare the rod, you kill the child, or you hurt the child. I think we are beneficiaries of that, or evidence of that. Thankfully, very thankfully, we grew up in a household where I think our parents, while they use corporal punishment, I don't think they use it excessively. And we grew up in a world where our parents knew, again, how to escalate it to a point where you start to use it versus how to use other techniques. And so I think as adults, we see the value of that. So to someone who would say that's bad, I would say, I think I've grown up in an environment. I know there are stories. We're totally aware. There are stories of people who have suffered significant trauma from growing up in an environment. We didn't grow up in that environment, and we've not been shortchanged emotionally because we've grown up in an environment where corporal punishment was used. And so we are firmly of the belief that there's huge value in that, therefore. Until our kids grow up 30, 40 years from now, and if they get messed up and it's full of trauma, then okay, sorry, we made a bad choice. We made a mistake. But I think our evidence so far in life tells us that it's probably not the bad choice. I think it's the right choice to make.
Yeah. I think just to add to that, I think rightly pointed out, we come from this background where, we don't see ourselves as traumatized. But just looking at it from a 180 look, if, for whatever reason, that we could be carrying legacy trauma for whatever reason, and stuff like that. I always say this, it has done us well. In the sense that even until today's, and I'm not just talking about family, right? I'm talking about our interaction even with peers or even with our teams, our employees, our teams, like, the teams that we manage and stuff like that. We obviously do not have the tool of a corporate punishment tool, but there are a lot of other corporate tools out there in the market to kind of put people in place, PIPs, KPIs and stuff like that. And the ability to have the strength to impose it, I think it's very important. And that drives a certain level of leadership. That's important for senior management, that's important for leadership roles. And so to a great extent, I think a lot of these things shape the way you are as a person, and it shapes the value system that you bring to wherever you go, whether you come into the corporate world, whether you come into your interactions. And so one is that. On the second element, and I think the second part to all of it is we have had the benefit of parenting styles from our parents, households where there were guardrails with regards to corporate punishment, right? And in the same way, I think we put those guardrails into our own lives also. We're not going to be, spanking our kid in the midst of drinking alcohol, or being intoxicated, or things like, or being under the substance or stuff like that. We don't have that value system. So in that sense, keeping those guardrails in place is probably very important. And then it goes back to that wider picture. 1 year, is there impact? Is there going to be an impact 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, 5 years, 10 years, And I think to date, we've put in place certain of these things that keeps us in check, Yeah.
You, a lot of what we're talking about, I realize, including this corporal punishment, comes back down to what you describe your eldest son to have, self-regulation, because it's also the adults that have to regulate in the midst of career and parenting. I was just recalling our entire conversation so far when we first talk about career, when to pursue a career, when to push hard, when to start a family, when all that. It comes back down to your values, right? What do you value at a certain season of time?
Yep.
And that's self-awareness, isn't it? Then I like how when we moved on to talk about parenting philosophy, you had some kind of framework where you mentioned that for you right now, it's important to instill responsibility into your kids, and the other one was regulation and how they view authority figures. Comes back to also then the cane, right? When we use the rotan, why do we use it? Are we also lashing out? Because sometimes our anger at a kid's behavior may not actually be the anger at our kids' behavior is more of an issue than the kids' behavior itself. Right? And we have to be very careful why we use whatever method of discipline. Because we don't want, not all punishment comes in active punishment. There's some passive as well, right? There's some parents who might then go, well, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not
emotionally
going to look at
unavailable.
You. They just detach themselves from the child, right? Which can also be equally damaging, not just physically, right? So it's really understanding at the end of the day, what do you value in life? How do you see your career and what kind of family you want to raise? I think not many people actually put a lot of thought into that. I certainly have not put enough thought into that. What kind of culture we want to have at home. we talk about culture in companies, right? You know, we put it on the wall. This is the things that we want to do. We get like consultants in. We have team buildings. We have like focus groups all on drilling in on like, this is the kind of company we want to have. Maybe we should also do the same with our homes, right? What kind of home environment do we want? Maybe we should write a policy book.
Sure, yeah.
I mean HR, right?
Scorecard.
Write a SOP on certain things, right? But I mean, it's really coming down to who we are as people, our values, and what kind of children we want to, what kind of life we want to build, which involves our career and also the family environment that we want to create. So yeah, it's been really, really insightful. One last thing I do want to ask you is your marriage, like any practical tips on that? Because I have half the amount of kids that you have, but I still find that, you know, putting in that time with your spouse is so important. I've come to this realization quite a while ago, even though I've not actively or I've not sufficiently acted on that realization compared to the duration of time I came to it, is just because you're doing something with your spouse does not mean you're actually connecting with them, right? Yep. And I've had numerous people, as I've read books, articles tell you, don't just do stuff with your spouse, right? Make sure that you're connecting with them, go on date nights, that kind of thing. I don't know, so like, you guys already have a very full life. What do you do around those things? Your marriage and with each other, making sure the romance is alive or that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. So again, I think we're very honest with ourselves as well. So if there is a trade-off that we make in this season of life, it is the marriage. But I think certainly are we the honeymoon couple before we got married? Where life was so exciting, we would climb the highest mountain and swim the deepest sea? Probably not. Not today, certainly.
No.
It's a function of both energy as priorities and so on.
Time.
But you're right. I think there are some core kind of behaviors or core kind of practices. So simple things like we don't do date nights because it's a bit too hard, but date lunches. Or we try our best to do date lunches once a week.
It's been once a quarter.
Yeah, because unfortunately, we were supposed to celebrate our anniversary or birthdays
and
last week, but then
whatever.
our daughter got sick last week, so we couldn't do our date lunch. So things like that happen. Life happens, unfortunately.
happens.
But we do try to keep things like that. A little time together. I think weekends for us are probably the best. Best in terms of weekends in terms of connecting with one another.
Okay.
Because you kind of are together a little bit together with the family, and so in the midst of moving around from point A to point B, we are able to have a little bit more casual conversations vis-a-vis the weekdays where it's like,
Planning.
Get this out, pick him up, put him to bed, feed him, clean her. Those sorts of windows are a bit less. So I think we try to make kind of those shorter moments or those shorter instances of interaction count a little bit more. But we will. I think we're pretty honest. Certainly, it's not compared to a newly the point where we were newly married and you literally had one another, you could do whatever you wanted. Certainly, that's a huge contrast to where we are today.
Yeah. I think what's important is expectations. Yeah, because I think recognizing that there will be, and then like what Chris said, we're in this season where it's highly functional. Everything is planning, and any questions we ask is purely to be able to plan things, right? What's important to all of this is that there's a mutual expectation or mutual understanding and mutual respect amongst each other. That one, are we going to emotionally get everything from the other person? No. But at the same time, we are not going to be looking for it outside the marriage. We are keeping the sanctity of the marriage within the marriage, correct? So then recognizing that one is that. And two, and when I say expectations, what as a woman, I would say as a woman, I think what's probably very, very important is the ability to not overthink. Yeah, and not to mull on the lack or mull on the potential loss or potential all these things. I think that in itself helps with ensuring that you don't build unnecessary expectations or grudges and stuff like that. And kudos to the men, kudos to Chris, I think. It is the ability to multitask. Like what Chris said, I think during the weekends where we have all these short moments to interact, taking those times and recognizing that those short periods, just sitting in the car and having a short conversation is a form of connection, and not dissing it as, as like they were just operating. I think those moments is important. Yeah, that recognition from both sides, that even little moments. I give you an example. We had no time to think much about anything, and the only time we really had much to think about today's discussion that we wanted to have about work and parenting and marriage and all these things was early this morning, right? And we had only 15 minutes
Over breakfast.
And the kids were crawling on the floor. They were all over the floor with breadcrumbs all over the floor. And that's pretty much where we kind of, And we had to say, we have to. And after that, we went our separate ways within that period. Yeah. So that's inevitable. And that's a reality of this messy life.
Do you think that there are, because if I would look at stats, right, and I would just talk to people around me, that I think it is kind of like observable that more and more people are finding, juggling all these things, career, parenting, marriage, challenging, right? And then we've also seen that divorce rates are getting higher, and all of that, right? Do you think that it then comes down to that mismatch and maybe unmanaged expectations? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Definitely. I think from an unmatched, I don't deny, I think expectations is a huge part when it comes to marriage and making it work. Because reality is, what works for us will probably never work for another couple, and will probably never work. Bottom line comes down to, not bottom line, but I would say a lot of it is driven by expectations and value systems. And we keep talking about it because, like I said, a lot of our guardrails, you talk about culture just now, about our family culture and stuff like that. A lot of things we don't actually sit down and discuss it. Other than here, this forum today, I don't think, the last time, if I recall, we had this proper conversation was before Jehan was born. I think it was the day I went into labor, if I recall. But before all of this, I think we were at TGIF, if I'm not mistaken. But other than this, right, we don't actually have the time. And a lot of it is alignment of values, which comes out in probably day-to-day interactions, which that's the beauty of marriage, to be very fair. It is not something that you can expect from an employee. You can have one interaction with an employee and you think that you've imparted it, but they may not get the message. But ideally with your husband and with your spouse, right? It's he will make a comment and I will make a comment and I would hope that he takes it into account. So one is that. I think expectation is big. Value system is big. I think the very, very big part to making all of this work is, I won't say work but for now is keeping ourselves, trying our best I think that's what Chris always says. Like, we lack. There are a lot of areas that we lack. There are a lot of areas that we've compromised. But Chris always says we can always do better. But doing better does not mean that we are not okay. You cannot always say that we're not doing bad, we're doing okay. So,
Yep. I think open communication is also extremely important. You guys mentioned that you don't really have a lot of time to sit down and have a discussion, but you're communicating all the time, and it's just being sensitive to each other's needs. And I think communicating about expectations comes down to even things like calendaring. Right?
Oh, yes.
It's simple things like, hey, this week I've got this event that I would like to go for, or later in the year. It's just some of these
very true.
These things
every day
that we don't think about, but they actually make a huge difference. Compounded in if you take all of these small elements and compound them together, they actually can make a tremendous impact on your marriage, your parenting
And it's
style,
not just the two of us, because we always say, right, we have this army of support. It's not just our calendars that we have to align. We have to align everyone else's calendars. And yeah, it's so important. But talking about that, I think one of the things that very early onset, I think when we were still figuring a lot of our interactions, to be very fair, I think the way we communicate is probably very, very key. Talking about marriage and stuff like that, right? It's probably very key because we are very similar. We are very, very alpha. And when it comes to trying to do something, we can be very abrasive. Our styles can be very in your face. And so we've had to come to a common understanding that one, it's not about winning the argument. A lot of it is about ego also. So sometimes it's not sometimes, all the time, it's not about winning the argument, but it's having the bigger picture. What is the bigger picture in mind, correct? One is that. Two is what I think earlier on Chris said, don't let it escalate. Sometimes in the midst of things when we communicate, we are abrasive, we are things like that. We've had to kind of say, I'm not going to take it personally. He's not personally killing me. Although in the midst of it, there could be a lot of negative words. And so when you talk about open communication, to me, I think open communication, the third one to me is giving him the benefit of doubt, or even him giving me the benefit of doubt. When we say things, it is not intended to be malicious. It's not intended to be personal. It's just intended to drive things. So, small example, I have this tendency, and which he definitely doesn't like. I'll be like, what are you doing today? And the way I say it, in the heat of everything, in the heat of the stress, at the end of the day, I'll be like, what's your plan tomorrow? Are you going to office? Are you not? Are you doing this? Da, 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 da. And my only goal is because I need to plan the kids' schedule. But in his eyes, he's like, why are you interrogating me? What's wrong with this? And then, historically, we would clash. It would be a big, and it will be explosive. But in today's world, he's like, what are you asking? And then I will give him my long story, and then it gets easier lah. Yeah.
I think that just happens because we've been married longer.
Yes.
Before we were married, oh my God, not before we were married, early in marriage, we could fight about anything. Like, I remember one of our funniest and biggest fights was over someone buying my dad a pair of jeans.
Oh yeah.
And we fought over, wow, I think it's terrible. And she's like, no, she was like, what's wrong with him? And I'm like, why can't a guy buy my dad a pair of jeans? And at some point we're like, why are we even fighting about this of all stupid things? But as we've been married for a bit longer, I think we've kind of understood this. Sometimes this is how we talk. Sometimes these are just things that we're trying to get done. I think it helps to recognize our personalities and the fact that we are very task-driven. We get things done and we speak a certain way to get things done, not because, as Rachel said, not because it's personal. So those things kind of matter a lot. And I think there is value in being married for a while.
Or knowing each other.
Yeah, and knowing each other and not just kind of, it comes back to marrying well, not just kind of marrying someone because you think he or she is just so hot and full stop, that's it. But really sharing the right values. Being attracted, not just by looks, but by values and by the things that we both believe in, and understanding that this is a journey that we'll grow to understand each other. And at points, even when things don't work out, these values still matter, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
What I've gotten out so far from this great conversation so far is values, right? Number one, know what you value and align with your partner what their values are, and if there are some points of discussion, then discuss it openly and then come to some kind of consensus. Use that as the basis to kind of like then design the life that you want, right? Even down to simple things like calendaring, where to get support and all that. But the other thing is calibrate and tweak along the way.
Yes.
Right? No matter how much you plan, how much you want to cement your values at the start, things change, things evolve. It's having that kind of flexibility and grace towards one another and everyone around you, especially the kids, that we're all figuring it out. We're all on a journey together.
Yeah.
But it can be a positive one. Yeah. Great. Before we close, any last thoughts from you guys, just around career or parenting, marriage? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think my only thought coming back to what we have talked about and thinking about it and what has worked for us, it takes a village to raise a child. I mean, in our case, that's never been more true. So again, what I would say, thinking about and reflecting on some of the earlier questions you said around, if someone of a young person were to ask us that question around what would I do to balance, my family aspirations and my career aspirations, for us, very, very critically, is that you got to have the right support system and the right village in your life. And that village, first of all, starts with your wife or with your spouse. You've got to have that clear understanding that both of you are in this together. I think we haven't talked a lot about this, but the roles that we play in the house are really, really fluid. At some point when we had one kid, one side I would do the cooking and the cleaning, and then she would do the kind of one side of it. And we are very, very clear. It takes a village to raise this child. If you need to do A, I will do B. If I need to do A, you will do B. And then extends, of course, to the community that we have.
Is there any role or task in the household where it's exclusively to assigned to the other person, or it's really everything's fluid? Like sometimes you're showering the kids, whoever's available, picking up food, whoever's taking out the trash, whoever's available, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So the only role that is not fluid is cooking. She can't cook. So,
not even going to try.
Nah, we don't want to try. So, but also, to be fair, I don't cook much these days. Today we have a part-time helper that comes and helps us to cook. But no, so you're right. So apart from that, I think generally it's fluid. Having said that, of course, we try to structure it as best as we can. So at certain periods or seasons of life, I will, I'll take the bathing of a child. She'll take the feeding of a child. Or in certain periods of life, I will pick, this group of kids, these two of my younger kids up every day, except on Mondays and Tuesdays or something like that. So that we kind of structure it, but it's fluid. I think it can be really fluid depending on our life.
What about household admin, like all the bills and all that? Is that kind of split?
Oh, you're right. That's the other thing that's not fluid. No.
Because I don't like to do it.
Yeah. No, she never paid a bill in I don't know how many years now.
So it's all on you, Chris?
It's all on me. So I handle all the finances, all the bills, all the management, all the budgeting and everything. It's also something I enjoy doing. She thinks I'm weird. It's downtimes.
It's something that you enjoy doing.
Yes.
I love doing it.
I put it on record. He enjoys doing it.
I love
during
doing
his free time, he enjoys looking at company financials.
Yeah.
So-
I love doing that. I love, I can look at a YouTube video of an Excel competition that lasts 3 hours. I love that.
Wow.
Just to figure out
That
how
is
do
a
people
gift.
build models
That is
in the
actually
most...
a gift. I wonder.
I don't deny that. It doesn't
people
come
build a
naturally to me.
Yeah. So I love doing that. So
Yes.
that's another thing that's not fluid.
Yes.
It's partly by capability, but it's also partly by
Oh,
interest.
and also what's also not fluid is I do all the purchasing of things.
That's
Toys,
right.
clothes,
That's right.
everything. So that's not fluid
What's
also.
not fluid is me
The
going
buying
to Shopee and shopping. Yeah,
Yes.
that's not fluid either. That happens.
But is that something you enjoy, or you just have to do it because somebody has to pick it up?
Well, I cannot deny that I enjoy shopping. It's just a form of shopping. To be very fair, it's not as if we shop excessively. But I'm sure I cannot rely on him to do that.
Yeah.
So
But you've got a system. You've got a system working for you, and I think that is important because sometimes resentment comes from that mismatch or unmet expectations, where somebody would be thinking, why am I the one doing this all the time? Why don't you do it sometimes?
Yes.
Right?
So one thing Chris
that
said
happens.
this, I remember him saying this to one of our kids. Our kid has just picked up, our eldest and our second child has picked up this habit of saying, why am I always doing everything? I don't know where they picked it up. And Chris made this comment, and I think it rings very true. He says, we do everything in this family to get it working. Yeah. And I think everyone does everything. And we tell the kids that also. You do your part because you are a part of this family. And that's probably what I would say, just to add to everything that thing to kind of tie in is having that bigger goal in mind, that we're all going forward as a family and growing together as a family, is very, very, very important. Yeah, because then it keeps everyone to a great extent aligned from a even the kids. The kids are aware of the wheel they are in the entire cog, and we need everyone to work to be able to operate together as a family. Yeah.
Great. Anything else you want to
No,
add on that?
yeah, I think that's,
Yeah. Great. Well, Chris, Rachel, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on this conversation. I've personally learned a lot. It was causing me to reflect as we were talking, and certainly things that I will probably need to work on in my own life after this. And for everybody else, I've kind of like losing my voice a little bit. But thank you for joining us today at the Human Exchange, or THX for short. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to check out the other episodes if you have not already, and go the extra mile by supporting us by liking and subscribing, and maybe even sharing the contents on this channel. Thanks, everybody. See you at the next episode. Bye-bye.